Assalamu alaikum students. So our today's topic is factoring polynomials. So using a GCF method, GCF greatest common factor. So we will do a quick review of what we did last was multiplying a monomial by a binomial, multiplying a monomial by a trinomial, multiplying a monomial by a binomial. So what we actually were doing, we were multiplying the monomial by each term inside the parentheses. So when I multiply a with 3a, it gives me 3a squared. As in multiplication, the powers are added. Now when a times 7 gives me 7a. Okay. The next one, negative 2m times m squared. This monomial is being multiplied by each term inside the parentheses. So negative 2 times m squared will give me negative 2. The coefficient is negative 2. And for the variables, we add the powers in multiplication. It becomes 3. Now in this negative 2m times by 6m gives me the coefficients multiply and gives me negative 12. And when the variables multiply, it gives me m to the power of 2. For the third one, negative 2 times negative 1 gives me a positive 2. And the variable itself comes like that. The last one is 5xy times x minus 2y. When I multiply this monomial by the term inside the binomial, inside this parentheses, I get 5. Now there are x times x gives me x squared and y comes as is. The next one is 5 times 2 is negative 10 x y squared. This was the multiplication of my monomial with binomial, trinomials, actually multiplications of polynomials. Now, the process of going from this product back to that term, to the final product, to how actually in the product form, to write it in terms of product, is called factorization. This process from factors to the final product is called multiplication. And the process of from this to going back to the factors is called the factorization. This is called multiplication. Okay, so today we are going to learn how to go back from this final product to the factored form where we get the two factors or the multiple factors. So the process of separating a polynomial back into a product is called factoring. Now, polynomials that cannot be factored are called prime. We cannot factor out anything from those are prime. There will be several ways to factor. The approach we will take depends on the polynomial. Okay, so the approach is depending on each different polynomial situation. Today we will start by the greatest common factor of the polynomial. Now, these are the examples. Factor the following polynomials by finding the greatest common factor. Check your answer by redistributing or by multiplying. Now, there are 4 steps we need to know before we move on. To factor this polynomial, the first step is to look at the coefficient first. Look for the coefficient and find the GCF. GCF means the greatest common number which can divide these two. I can see which 3 and 12. I'm looking at the coefficients. Both are divisible by 3. Okay, so I'm gonna write 3. Now, the next step is, do we have variable in both the terms? If yes, then we should move forward. But we could see that there is no variable which is common in both. So we will leave it as is and we will write it in this form. Whatever is a common factor, we write it here, which is divisible by both. So now the next step is divide all the terms by this GCF to get the remainder inside the parentheses. So I'm going to divide this 3x because these are coefficients only. I'm going to divide 3 by 3. I get 1x. So do I have to actually write 1? No, I'm going to write just x. Plus 12 divided by 3. I'm dividing. Next is dividing. 12 divided by 3 is 4. This is the factored form. Now the question says check your answers by redistributing. Now mentally we have to check 3. If I distribute 3 times x, I get 3x, and if I distribute 3 with 4, I get 12. So I get my question back. So this means this is correct. Okay. The next step is 5x plus 30y. Look at the coefficients. Do we have any GCF in the coefficients? If yes, then write that GCF outside. 5 and 30. Both are divisible by 5. So I'm going to write this GCF outside. Is there any common variable which both terms shares? No. So we will only have 5 as a common factor. Now 5 divided by 5 gives me 1, which gives me x, only 1x. Plus 30 divided by 5 gives me 6, and take this y as is. I can check my work by redistributing. This is my final answer. These are the factored. In factorization, you will have a factored form. One this and this, factored form. This is the factored form when we have parentheses and a number or binomial outside. Let's do the next one. It's the same thing. Look at the coefficients first, 6 and 27. The number which can divide 6 and 27 at the same time is 3, I guess. Yes. So I'm going to take this as a greatest common factor. It should be a greatest common factor, not a smaller one. Okay. So I take out 3. Is there any variable which is common in both the terms? No. So only 3 is my GCF. Now 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. A squared comes as is. 27 divided by 3 is 9, plus 9. Check your work. This is my answer, but check your work. 3 times 2 is 6. A squared. 3 times 9 is 27. Let's come with the variable. Look at the coefficients first. 21 and 3. The greatest common divisor for 21 and 3 is 3. Now I can see that they have a variable. Both are having the same variable, d. Now if a variable is common to all the terms, that is a GCF. So yes, d is the only variable which is common. So I'm going to take this out and I have d. Now c is not in common, so I leave c as is. Now I'm going to divide this. This is my GCF. Now 21cd divided by 3d. First divide the coefficients. 21 divided by 3 gives me 7. C cannot be divided because there is no c, so I'm going to write c as is. D divided by d is 1, right? So it's not 0, okay? It's d divided by d is 1. So we don't actually have to write 1. Minus 3d divided by 3d gives me 1. I have to write here because here it was being multiplied, right? That's why we did not write. This is my final factored form. When I distribute, I get 3 times 7 is 21. CD, 3 times d, 3d minus times minus 1 gives me 3d. Now let's do this one. 15a squared v minus 30ab. Look for the coefficients, the first step. Look for the greatest number which can divide. 3 can divide both. but I have to look for the GCF, greatest common factor. So 5 is the one which can divide both, right? So is it 5? No, 15. 15, yeah, 15 can divide both. Okay. Now the next step is a variable. For the variable, it has to be common in both. Now, if we have a variable with different exponents, choose the exponent with the smallest exponent as a GCF. I have a squared and I have a to the power 1. So I'm going to choose the smallest one out. Now b is common in both, so I have to, if they are same, you factor out, take the GCF as is the same. Now this 15ab is my GCF for these two terms. If I divide the coefficient first, 15 divided by 15 gives me 1. A squared divided by a. Remember, when we are dividing, we subtract the powers. So we get a 2 minus 1. We get a only, right? So a squared, you subtract the powers. What you get? Only a. 1 minus 1 is 0. B to the power of 0 is 1. So I just have to write a here. All right? Minus 30ab. Coefficients divide gives me 2. AB divided by AB is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Recheck your work. This is my factored form. Okay. Now let's do this one. AB minus A. There are no coefficients. The coefficient is 1. Look for the variables. Which variable is common in both? A is common. So I'm going to take out A as a GCF. Now B is only in this one. So AB divided by A gives me only B. Minus A divided by A is 1. Okay. We will do few more with trinomials. Okay. So now here, factoring a trinomial, we have to look for the coefficients, the greatest common factor, which can divide 6, 14, and 10 at the same time. So the only number which can do that is 2. So if I factor out 2, now y to the power 4, y to the power 3, and y to the power 2. When we have a variable with different exponents, we should factor out the GCF is the one which has the smallest exponent. So I'm going to take y squared here as the smallest GCF. Now the greatest factor. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. Y to the power 4 divided by y to the power 2. We subtract the exponents. I get y to the power of 2. Plus 14 divided by 2 gives me 7. Y cube divided by y squared. What we just do is subtract the exponents. I get only y. Minus 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then y squared divided by y squared is 1. So 1 times 5 is 5. Always check your answer. Okay, look for the greatest common factor. I'm going to do this 13 also. 18 and 48 are divisible by 6. Okay, the greatest common factor. Now, I have multiple variables. A and A here. Look for the smallest exponent. A with this smallest exponent, I'm going to factor out. B, same, so we factor out B. C, the smallest one, C squared. We factor out C squared. Okay, so 18 divided by 6 is 3. A squared divided by A gives me A. B divided by B gives me 1, so times 1 is the same thing. C squared divided by C squared gives me 1, so 3A times 1, we don't have to actually write. Minus 48 divided by 6 gives me 8. A divided by A, cancel, divide 1. B divided by B gives me 1. C cubed divided by C squared, subtract the powers and we get only C. Okay. You can multiply to check your work. 6 times 3 is 18. A times A is A squared. B C squared. 6 times 8 is 48. A B C cube. I'm going to do one more with different Okay, let's do this last one. 3a cubed b square c minus 9. Okay, look for the coefficient. The one which can go, the greatest common factor, which can divide is 3. Now, ABC. Look for the a with the smallest exponent. So I'm going to, my a would be the GCF. For b, b squared, b cubed, b4. My b squared, the smallest exponent, will be the GCF. C, only C will be my GCF. Now when I divide, I get 3 divided by 3 is 1. I don't have to actually write 1. A cubed divided by A gives me A squared. B squared divided by B is 1 times 1 doesn't make sense. C divided by C is also 1. So A squared times 1 will give me the same. Now 9 divided by this 3. We have to divide this by the GCF. All the terms with GCF. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. A squared divided by A gives me A. B cubed divided by B gives me B. C squared divided by C gives me C. Plus 5, because 15 divided by 3. A divided by A is 1. A to the power of 0, which is 1. So 5 times 1 is 5. B4 divided by B squared gives me B squared. And C cubed divided by C gives me C squared. This is my final answer. You can check your work by multiplying. This is the factored form, and this is a polynomial after you distribute. Okay, these are the recap rules for finding a GCF of a polynomial. I hope you understand the topic factorization. Assalamu alaikum.